Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining. My name is Danielle Mitchell. I'm the CEO and founder of Black Women in Clinical Research. Tonight, we are going to be talking about medical writers. I have some awesome speakers and I have my lovely co-hosts. So I am going to start off with introducing my co-host. Courtney, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me. I am Courtney. I am a proud member of Black Women in Clinical Research. I am a recent member. I think I just joined probably in March, I think, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. I'm just excited to be here. I'm happy to share in this conversation and experience the greatness that is Black Women in Clinical Research.
Thank you, Courtney. And Courtney has on our shirt, plug real quick. Diversify the workforce, yes. Diversify the patient population. Thank you, Courtney. Andrika.
Hi, everyone. I am Andrika Thomas, also known as the interview guru, also known as I'm behind the marketing for Black Women in Clinical Research. So I am the creative director. I am currently an oncology project manager at a cancer center. And yeah, let's do it.
Yes, thank you, Andrika. I call it Andrika the interview prep queen. And Andrika is always there for me, y'all. Like whenever, it's like a lot of times, like
don't get to crying now.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. But I'm just saying, I always like to give people their flowers and for being there and being supportive and everything like that. But anytime I need Andrika, even if it's late at night, a lot of times Andrika's up with me. So yes. And thank you so much, Andrika and Courtney. So let's get started with our speakers. Shay, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
Sure. So I'm Shay Webb, and I'm also a very proud member of Black Women in Clinical Research and one of the HBCU ambassadors with Danielle, where we talk about clinical research to different HBCUs around the country. But in my 9-to-5, the job that pays me every day, I am an associate medical writer at PPD, and I write ICS for different sites. So we are the ones that put the forms in layman's terms rather than the scientific terms that are in the protocol. On top of that, I'm a student at UNCW, and in clinical research, I'm excited to see where it can go, especially with us in Black Women in Clinical Research.
Thank you, Shay. You definitely sound like you are wearing a lot of hats. I see you everywhere on LinkedIn. I just get so excited when I see your posts and the post that that we were talking about today, where they shared about you. That's amazing. So keep up the awesome work.
Your post makes me want to have a praise break. So it's okay.
You like, won't he do it? Okay, Lydia, if you would please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lydia Morris. I actually just recently learned about Black Women in Clinical Research, but I'm loving it so far. I love the sisterhood and the resourcefulness and just how friendly and open and welcoming everyone is. I am a senior medical writer at Syneos Health, which is headquartered in Morrisville, North Carolina. I live in Durham, North Carolina, and I do a couple of different types of medical writing. I write manuscripts and abstracts that report on clinical trial results. And then I also write regulatory documents where the audience is regulatory bodies such as the FDA and other regulatory organizations. And so I'm always really excited to talk to people about getting involved in medical writing. I've been a member of the American Medical Writers Association for a long time. I was the president of our local chapter, and I just have talked to a lot of different people about breaking in. So if you are, after this, interested in breaking into medical writer, I'd love to connect and stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Lydia. And let's get started with the questions. I know you ladies have kind of already touched on this, but if we can just talk about this a little bit further. What is a medical writer, and can you describe your typical workday? Lydia, I'll start with you.
Sure. So simply a medical writer is just someone who communicates medical information in written form. And there's a variety of different types of medical writing. As you've already heard, Shay and I do different types of medical writing. Um, and before I was doing what I'm doing now, I was writing educational and training materials for pharmaceutical reps. And then I decided that I wanted to do something a little bit more structured and a little bit more technical, which is how I got back into manuscript writing and regulatory writing. And I would say that a typical day really involves writing and formatting documents, working with teams of researchers to develop the content, and then doing a lot of project management and administrative requirements. So as a medical writer, you're really wearing a lot of different hats, and you're not just sitting in front of a computer with Microsoft Word open all day. You're really interacting with people and making decisions and helping researchers make decisions. So that's kind of in a nutshell what medical writing is for me on a daily basis.
Thank you, Lydia. Shay.
I'd say Lydia really hit it on the head. And honestly, my thoughts of medical writing, I'll go ahead and put this disclaimer out. They're all mine. They have nothing to do with my company, with PPD, or anywhere where I come from. But she's right. When it comes to medical writing, you're not just going to be writing documents, no matter what department you're going in. A lot of it has to do with time management, with writing, making sure you're within your metrics. So even though you're a medical writer, you're still have billing. So you're still going to need your billing codes. You're going to make sure you're not going over the PM's budget with the hours that you have. And if it's a big project and it's under their budget, you are responsible for letting them know that, okay, we can't do it in this time frame. We can do it in this time frame, but this might be extra. So it's a lot of critical thinking, and it's also a lot of administrative stuff. So making sure that all of your dates are in order. So for example, it's very important for at least your manager to know when you complete your documents or how many documents you're doing and for what company, because all of that's going to go into the resourcing. And it's not just you that has to work on documents. You're the first hand, but you're going to have to get it reviewed. You're going to have to get it peer reviewed. And it's a lot of different hands to go into one document. I won't say simple document because there are so many different types. You can have pages that are 5 pages, yet you have 27-page documents. And they can range from, 1 day to maybe 4 days. And that's something as a medical writer, you have to figure out how long is this going to take me? And you have to start pacing yourself. So it's almost like you're not the PM, but you have to be the PM of yourself. You have to make sure you're managing everything so that it's going to run smoothly when you start writing the actual document.
Thank you, Shay. So I know a lot of times that when people are interested in medical writing, they're not really clear on the pathway to become a medical writer. So what is the pathway to become a medical writer? Do you need a writing background? Shay, I'll have you.
Honestly, I can say that there's no straight way to becoming a medical writer. And I say that because before I was a medical writer, I was a clinical trial coordinator. And a lot of people say, okay, if you're a CTC or a CTA, you're going to be on the path to become an RSM or remote site monitor or a CRA, and then go up the manager role like that. But with medical writing, I feel like one of the biggest things is that you have a love for writing. And a lot of times people think like, okay, it's science, it's writing, perfect, I'll just do that. But it's a lot more into that. It's actually going in, doing the writing, but making sure like, okay, what is this colon cancer? Is the way that they're doing it, does that make sense? Are they doing too many visits to the site? Like there's a lot of things you have to start thinking, because not only do I like to write, but I also have to put on that empathetic eye. And that's just to say, I wrote this is coming from the protocol, but I'm reading it and I'm thinking, okay, are they going to understand this? Did I understand what I just read? Because if I don't understand it, I know that the patient isn't going to understand it. And really making sure that you think about that is a huge part of medical writing. But when it comes to the path in general, I think one of the biggest parts of medical writing is who you're connecting with. So like Lydia was saying, you know, even getting an AMWA was a big part of me stepping into medical writing, because originally I was coming from a whole different department, and I asked someone in there about like an entry level role of a research associate, and they noticed how I enjoyed writing and what my background were, and they told me about the AMWs, which I'd never heard of. But just by reaching out and getting my foot in the door, and even reaching out to someone on LinkedIn, which is honestly how I got into medical writing, found out what their role was and sending them a quick IM, that was the start. So I wouldn't say there's a particular route, but there are different steps, I'd say, that's more successful in medical writing.
Okay. And in addition to that, what experience is necessary to be a successful medical writer?
Oh, is that for either of us?
You can start, Shay.
Oh, okay. Definitely patience. And that's for you and your team, because when you get into it, it's going to be a lot of information all at once, and it's very fast paced. However, with that fast pacedness, a lot of times you'll be working with different teams, and the team you work on isn't always your medical writing team. It could be like a team in general medicine, a team in oncology, or whatever department it is. And a lot of times the client will want it yesterday, and you'll work on it all day and get it yesterday. And then it'll be like, well, we actually don't need it anymore. And then you have like a month hiatus sometimes where you don't hear anything. And just having that leeway, making yourself accessible, because just because you don't have an assignment for yourself right then doesn't mean your team member doesn't. And with that, like, medical writing is very collaborative. So you're going to be working on your own assignments, but there's also going to be pockets for you to support your team members. And with that, that could mean that a person could be put on a project, for say, and they're assigned 3 ICFs in one project. And for anyone who doesn't know, ICFs are informed consent forms. You only have time to do one form. What are you going to do with the other 2? You would reach out to your teammates and say, can someone pick up these 2? Can someone assist me? And that's how it works out. You have that, you know, give and take. And of course, if someone isn't able to help you, you can reach out to your manager. But it's also the flip side. You're able to help your team members when they need you. And honestly, as fast as it goes and as fast as studies come in, a lot of times I feel like in clinical research, we're used to getting one study sometime and sticking on it for a few months. Well, in medical writing, you get a study and you stick on it for a few days, if that sometimes. So just making sure you're up to date. You have your calendar like it is your best friend. You keep all of your study timelines together. What I like to do is I keep it in Excel, so I can have a tab for each study that I'm on, so I can see where I'm at. And just like find a system that works for you, because what one medical writer is going to do, another one's not going to do. Completely fine, just as long as you get the job done. There's a lot of ways around it.
Wow. A few days. When you said that, I was like, oh, Lord.
Oh, yes.
Goodness, I couldn't even imagine that. You definitely have to be able to switch and pivot really quickly if you only have a few days, and to make sure that you're doing your job efficiently. So Lydia, I can repeat the question because I know the question was like a 2-part question.
Sure.
So what is the pathway to becoming a medical writer?
So one thing I wanted to say, just in contrast to what Shay said, she does a type of medical writing that is a little bit more fast-paced in terms of the amount of time that you spend on each document. I work on documents that take months to develop. So I started the current project I'm working on, I think in March, and it's going to finish up next month in August. So it's fast paced, but I get a little bit more time to get acquainted with the document before I have to pass it on. So I just wanted to add that contrast because there are lots of different types of medical writing, and depending on the type that you do, that can influence how much time you get to spend on a document before you hand it off. But in terms of the pathway, Shay is absolutely right. I mean, there are countless pathways to becoming a medical writer. I think it really depends on your background. My background is I have a PhD in genetics and molecular biology, and I also did several years of a postdoctoral fellowship. So I already had the kind of the science background. And then I did a couple of internships to get more clinical experience before I was able to really get a clinical medical writing job. My first entry-level job I got just by applying on LinkedIn with no connections or anything. I just saw it and I applied and I interviewed and I started working, but it was pretty low paying. And I knew pretty much right away that I wanted to do something else that was a little bit more exciting and where I could make a little bit more money. And so my subsequent jobs, which were in the regulatory field, and now I'm doing regulatory and writing manuscripts and abstracts, I got through networking. So I started going to networking events for regulatory science and for medical writing. And I just ended up meeting people and getting involved in organizations where when people knew about a job that their company needed to fill, they would tell me about it and I would just talk to their manager, and then I, interviewed and got that. So it can vary. If you're looking for entry-level jobs, there's a lot of entry-level companies hire entry-level, or a lot of companies now are doing internships. So if you're entry-level and you have either a science background or you have a writing background and you want to enter into clinical research, then one of these entry-level positions or a internship would be a really good start. And I can talk to you about the types of companies that do those internship programs. But if you already start with a strong research background with some writing experience that's required to be a researcher, like if you have a master's or a PhD, or even if in your undergrad you did some laboratory research, then I think it's a little bit easier to just jump straight into a medical writing job. But if you don't have a background in writing or a strong background in science, they do have certificate programs and master's programs where you can get additional experience in clinical writing, technical writing. And my mentor at work, actually, he worked in newspapers for a really long time, and he made his transition to medical writing by getting a master's in, I think, science communication. So there are a lot of different pathways and ways that you can get involved. It really just depends on where you're at and what resources you have available to you. But I think the main thing is that you really want to have strong writing abilities and a strong desire to write, because you will write. And even though we wear a lot of hats as medical writers, you will be sitting in front of a Word document. And I know Shay mentioned some of her documents are maybe up to 30 pages long. Some of the documents I work on are up to several thousands of pages long. So you really have to not be scared of Microsoft Word. All of the, you really will become, if you're not an expert at Microsoft Word already, you will become an expert. You will get to use all of the different tools, the styles, macros, every aspect of Word that you can think of, you will get well acquainted with them as a medical writer. And then I think Shay kind of mentioned a lot of the soft skills. I mean, you need to be good at project management, planning, a little bit of psychology when you're talking to statisticians and the clinical research scientists and physicians and the safety personnel and everything in between. You'll have to use a little bit of psychology when maybe they don't agree on something and you kind of have to help them reach consensus. There's a lot of troubleshooting, especially if you're working remotely. A lot of times we have to log into virtual machines, and we use a lot of SaaS. So those are just like the online software applications that we use for project management, customer service, initiative, problem solving, time management, organizational skills, just all the soft skills that you've developed in your current role as a student, what have you, you'll bring to medical writing and kind of put them all together to accomplish all of the different goals when you're managing a document project. So hopefully that answers the question in terms of the pathway and really what skills you need to be able to bring to the table to do medical writing.
Yes, it definitely answers that. I feel like I have a lot to unpack there. So with, getting into the industry, I think a lot of times people fear taking a low paying position in order to get in, and thinking that this low paying position, I have to, stay at this position and not really see that the benefits of being and possibly in a low paying position, even though it might be low paying, it'll give you that foundation a lot of times that you need. I know a lot of times people, with positions are like, okay, I want to be in this position because it's high paying, but realize like a lot of times with the high paying positions, there's more responsibilities and you're kind of fast, tracked into these positions. But a lot of times in a lower position, you get that training that you need to be successful once you get to these higher paying positions and, increase job responsibilities as well. So I think that's very important. And I forgot what I was going to say, my second part, but it's okay. So we'll jump into what is the salary range for a medical writer? Lydia, if you can.
Sure. So just kind of continuing from the previous question and some of that discussion, a lower paying position. I was in my first writing job, I think only 9 or 10 months. So I stayed there long enough to kind of get my foot in the door and to get some experience, but I knew I didn't want to stay there long. So if you know where you want to go when you get started, I do suggest that, taking that lower paying position to get the training, because unlike some jobs, you really don't want to jump into medical writing if you don't know what you're doing, because it is very fast paced. And companies, even if you're an intern, I think they'll typically want you to be as independent as quickly as possible. And so if you really don't have any experience and you're trying to jump into like a senior level job, you might feel like you're drowning. So, but back to the question. So I think there's a large range, and there are some surveys out there for answering just this question in terms of the pay scale for different types of medical writing. But I think it can probably start anywhere from around 50 to well into the six figures. And it just really depends on the growth of your career. But I will say that it is a pretty good living if you stick with it. And if you work to get to sort of the around the senior level, principal level and above, I think you would be really happy with your salary. And I work 40 hours a week. I don't typically work more than that. And I feel like my position gets paid fairly well. So if you're looking for a good work-life balance, I would say this is a really good role. I work with a lot of moms, a lot of women who have families, and they're able to really balance this job and their families, because it is, when you're working, you're really working and you're really focused and plugged in, but you don't have to work 60 hours a week to do well in this career. So that's what I would say about that.
Okay, I remember what I was going to say, because when you said that thousands of pages, I couldn't do it, because when I was doing ICFs, that was already a lot of pages for me. So I couldn't even imagine, because I used to, when I was a coordinator, I would have to draft the ICFs. And if that's what you guys are doing with medical writing, hats off to you guys. Kudos, because drafting the ICF, oh my goodness, is a beast. So yes, if that is your passion, though, if you enjoy writing, I guess you just have to know what your calling is and what you're called to do. Like if that's something that you like to do. But I know for me, when I was doing those ICFs, it was a lot. It was tough. But I am, Shay, we're gonna also hit you with the salary range. So if you can, because I know that a lot of times too, within medical writing, there's an associate medical writer and then medical writer, and I'm pretty sure there's probably like a senior medical writer. So if you can tell us the range of those positions, that would be great.
Sure. So it honestly, I think, depends on what company you're at as well, depending on where you start as entry level, because for somewhere like where I am, you might be an AMW, which is an associate medical writer, and that's kind of, it's associate, but you're like kind of at the bottom of the totem pole until you move up. And when you move up, you have your other medical writers and your senior medical writers, and then you have your managers. And then that's where things kind of split off. So sometimes people become, you know, like the senior medical writer, or they can be like program manager. And when you become program managers, you're basically working directly with one type of project. So for example, if I became a program manager and they're like, you're assigned to somewhere like Lilly Diabetes, that means that any study that comes in from Lilly, I'm going to be assigned to. So whatever medical writer that is assigned to do the writing, I'm making sure they have everything they need. I'm communicating with the sponsor, communicating with the other managers. I'm just making sure everything is streamlined and okay. But with that, you can possibly, depending on where you are and also the region you're in, like Lydia said, 50, 60 maybe is a good start to get your foot in the door. But with that being said, some of my mentors who are also medical writers really talk up freelance medical writing. And that is way down the line. You know, you really know the trade, you're kind of in that entrepreneurial field, and you can make, at least from what I've heard and what I've seen, maybe 150 an hour medical writing. So that alone, I mean, just think about that full time, that's way into the 6 figures. So you'll definitely be comfortable.
I'm on mute. Yeah, I'm talking, I'm looking, I'm like, I'm on mute. Okay. Thank you so much, Shay. I am going to turn it over to Andrika.
I just wanted to ask Shay if you knew where they were freelancing. Were they putting it on websites like Upwork, or are they creating like LLCs and then working?
I think a lot of them kind of, and Lydia and I can talk with this, but a lot of them start and kind of get their resources from AMWA and get their audience there.
Okay. Oh, that's interesting. That's good to know.
Yeah, AMWA has a freelance directory, and so I think you pay a small fee and you can post your services on the freelance directory. Some people work at a company and then they meet some of their freelance clients while they're working at a company and then take that with them. There are several people who host medical writing courses, and then as part of the course, they'll throw you some freelance writing jobs your way to see how you do. And if you do well, then you can kind of take those clients and bring them on as your own. So there are a lot of different ways. I mean, you can just meet people at conferences and offer your services that way. So yeah, people find all kinds of different ways to find their freelance clients.
Yeah, I feel like as a medical writer, you'll never be broke, essentially. You have the skill and you can utilize it in so many areas. Okay, in terms of working remotely and managing your work, I know, Shay, you mentioned that you do a lot of fast-paced documents, and Lydia, you mentioned that yours are maybe a few months or longer than that. How do you prioritize your work, and also how do you manage that from home?
I can start. So I'm a pretty focused self-starter type of person, and I do much better in this remote environment than I ever did in an office where there are a lot of distractions. So I am very good at kind of big picture thinking. I think about all of my projects at once, and then I figure out like what I need to do for all my projects, and then I kind of plug that into my schedule. So all of my projects are based on a pretty strict timeline. And so at the beginning of a project, there's a specific timeline with dates, milestones, and everything, start and finish. So I can put all my timelines of all the documents I'm working on kind of side by side, and then look at them on like a several month scale, a monthly scale, a weekly scale, and a daily scale. And I just really break it down in that way. I use Microsoft OneNote to organize my time. And if I didn't have OneNote, I would be so lost. So that is how I keep track of everything. I have calendars and everything, but if I just have OneNote, my checklists, my daily, to-dos, that's kind of how I keep everything organized.
Nice, thank you. How about you, Shay?
So I love OneNote as well in a different way. It's more so if someone gives me a note or my manager has this instruction for me, I'll note it there so I can use it, like a binder as you would in school. But to keep me organized, I live by my Outlook calendar because everything copied on my Outlook calendar is copied on my personal calendar. That's like, for example, if I have, something after hours, I'll know like, okay, I need to get up earlier for this. And that was really important at the beginning because one thing about medical writers, especially since most of us are remote, not all of us are in the same region. So my manager right now is in India. And most of my team is in India. So we are on 2 different time zones. So there was one point in time where I would have to, get up a little earlier and, leave a little earlier. But, that all kind of worked out where everything was in working hours. But just making sure, like I look at my calendar and I say, okay, I want to have a meeting with my manager, but I'm not going to do that at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my time, because they're way gone to bed, or at least I'll be gone to bed. But just making sure like I prioritize all of my time. And going into Outlook even deeper, they had this feature called Focus. Or that might not be the exact name, but that's the gist of it. And it blocks off time on your calendar where you are literally just focusing. You're put on do not disturb. And I use that to the best of my advantage. And while I have that little 2-hour spot, I do a 25-5 method sometimes. And I'll set my timer and I'll write or I'll review my documents for about 25 minutes, rest for 5, and then go back into it so I don't burn out, because documents are really tiring. Sitting in one place, that can be completely tiring. But I just make sure like I have the resources around me, not only for my writing, but for my mental health and to rest. So when I get up, I try to get some tea, get some coffee, go back into the room, make sure I have, cool playlist, nothing too crazy, but make sure I'm in the right headspace. And one thing I love about my department in particular is that they're really big on wellness. So we have like our team huddles or like our department huddles, but 7 minutes before we actually get started, we have a whole wellness section where we talk about, what are some tips we can share with each other about what we can do to like be okay, pretty much. I mean, especially with everything going on and us being, under our workloads, what can we do to help each other? And then in addition to that, we'll start off the official meeting with what's good news. So don't talk about work, don't talk about, anything that's not good news, but what's something in life that is happening that's good going on. And I take that with me and I just put it in the rest of it.
Yeah, that's really great that your company, I'm not going to name your company, really takes the time to check on your well-being, because we are still human. I mean, some of this work we do is almost robotic. Like I can just imagine you typing all day and then rereading or reviewing the documents. My eyes would cross. Like, I don't know how you do it, but kudos to you. Okay. And so, Lydia, this one is for you. Earlier, I heard you mention that you have a PhD. I think your coworker went and got a master's. Are these advanced degrees or certificates needed for you to do this job?
No. So when I first went to school, I didn't even know what medical writing was. So, that wasn't where my focus was at that time. I think I have a lot of coworkers who have bachelor's degrees, and I think I have coworkers who were nurses. I have coworkers who, like I said, came from newspapers. So really what you need to have is some foundation in science, some foundation in writing. And that can look a lot of different ways. You don't have to have an advanced degree. If you majored in biology and you really liked to write, you probably are the perfect candidate for an entry-level medical writer position. Or even doing some freelance work, like if you know a professor who needs some help writing abstracts or manuscripts, things like that. So yeah, you definitely don't need these advanced degrees or certificates. The certificate really is just to kind of aid in someone who might have like more of a hole in their background where they need to fill it with some sort of technical writing experience, but it's absolutely not necessary. If you have a blog and you just like to blog about science related topics or, something like that, or if you write a newsletter, I mean, any type of writing, really, hiring managers just want to see that you like writing, that you have your own motivation toward writing, and that you're not just falling into medical writing because you don't know what else to do with your life. So it's really as simple as that.
Yeah, I think that's great that you mentioned that it doesn't have, your background doesn't have to be in medical writing. You could be a blogger or maybe have written some publications for a science project or something like that. I think people often forget about their transferable skills and feel like they're not qualified to do the role, but we really have to be aware of how skillful we are and really apply that. In addition, can you name any courses? It could be free courses, it could be paid courses that would help someone be successful at medical writing.
So my colleague, Jenny Pickett, has a blog post that is free and low cost resources for people who are interested in medical writing. And I'm going to put her, if that's okay, I'm going to put her information in the chat. And I believe that's right. Yeah. And so she has some, and it's really not even writing. Hers are more geared towards like biostatistics and just clinical trial basics, those kinds of things. So just to get a background in the type of information that you, thank you, Andrika, the type of information that you will need to have in your background. AMWA, the American Medical Writers Association, has a medical writing certificate. I believe it's a little bit pricey, so I'm not necessarily going to recommend it. I'm not a sponsor for AMWA. I don't speak for them. I just am conveying information.
Unless your company pays for it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but really, I mean, honestly, you can probably go online and find a lot of free resources. AMWA, the American Medical Writers Association website, actually has a lot of free resources in terms of just really learning what is medical writing. And honestly, it's really just writing, but the topic is medically related, content. That's really basically it. It's not a special type of writing. It's just that the content is medically related. You're going to be writing about clinical trials, drugs, the diseases that they treat, things like that. So it's not some specialized skill. It's just a specific subject area, basically.
Nice, thank you. Last question from me. What are some challenges or the biggest challenge that you would say you face in this role as a medical writer? Shay, please.
Yikes. The biggest challenge I think I would say is writing something that is lay friendly, but someone else who might not understand medical writing as well, putting it back into scientific terms. And then it's like, not only do you have to elaborate more of like kind of defend your work, but you also have to defend the patient and also understand that this is going to go past medical writing. It's going to go past FDA, and it's honestly, officially, ultimately going to go to the patient. And just remembering why you are in the job you are doing, like sitting there for hours a day writing a document, is for the patient. So I think just reminding not only yourself, but reminding the managers and the team members around you that, this is great, but some of this language won't work. And how some of the things that we may say in regular terms in the clinical research world, they're not going to be right for medical writing world. So for example, if I have a document and I say someone's going to be investigated, that's no. Or if I say the investigator will tell you more information, you're not going to say that. The people are going to wonder, like, you know, what is the CSI? What is going on? Who is an investigator? You have to say, this is the study doctor. This is the person who's going to be running the study. And you have to break it down and remember that, okay, you're a clinical research professional, but right now you're a medical writer. And even though they're under the same umbrella, they're not always the same thing.
Nice. So for people to actually understand, you're writing in almost layman terms, right? Good. Thank you. Lydia, do you have anything to add there?
Yes, sorry. So some of the challenges for me are tight deadlines. So even though so now projects are like several months, but we actually used to get even more time than that. So having just several months to do these large documents, it gets kind of tense. And now we're at the end stages. And so we're having to do like small increments in changing the timelines a little bit, but not changing the final timeline. And it just gets a little bit stressful. The workloads are always pretty heavy, especially if I'm juggling several projects at once. That gets a little bit challenging. There's a lot of problem solving and guessing what's going to be important to the team. So you'll kind of listen to a debate amongst all the different functions in the team, the statistician, the safety person, you know, the medical person, the pharmacodynamic person, and then you just kind of have to help the team make a decision based on what you hear and what you think is being said and what isn't being said. Having to learn new fields, that can be kind of challenging. And then I think for me, one of the biggest challenges is consistency. So if you can imagine, if you're working on a document that's thousands of pages long, you might say something in one way in one section, and then by the time you get to another section, you might say it slightly differently, but you can't do that. You have to say it the same way each time. And then you have like up to 20 different people in the document adding content. So then you have to go back and make sure that the way that they're saying things is very consistent from one place to the next. So that can be very, very challenging. So yeah, those are all the things that kind of keep me up at night when I'm thinking about my projects.
I'm just thinking about, like, how can someone be consistent with over 1,000 pages? It's like, I'm not even consistent in me talking in 5 minutes. So thank you, ladies.
Yeah.
I'm going to hand it over to Courtney.
All right. So we, you both have kind of mentioned different avenues that you can take past being an assistant medical writer or a medical writer, but where do you see yourselves going in the medical writing realm?
I think I see myself ultimately potentially becoming like a program manager one day, because I enjoy the aspect of working with one company and getting to know how they think and how they write. Because one thing about medical writing, everybody writes differently. Everybody has different requests. Everyone has different demands. And just like getting the art of, now I can't say you can master it, but at least getting used to one group of people with all these different therapeutic areas, I think that's something I would like to look into.
So when I started at my current job, I was basically an associate medical writer. Medical writer 2 was the specific position. And so I worked my way to senior medical writer, and I'm hoping to work my way to principal next. So I really enjoy being able to learn new document types, taking on more responsibilities. And now I'm mentoring junior writers and like the SME for certain systems and document types. So I really think I just want to take on more responsibility, learn how to do my job better, and move up. I don't know if I want to manage people, but I would love to play a more leadership role in planning documents and doing more higher level project management if possible.
And just know program managers and line managers are different, just to put that in there.
Say that again?
Program managers and line managers are different, just so that everyone else knows.
Yeah, so in my company, they kind of mix them together, but at a lot of companies, like I know at PPD, they're completely separate entities. So yeah, that really differs from one company to the next.
So that's good that you guys have found kind of like your niche in the field. I know that there are a lot of people who kind of, you know, they pride themselves on being able to switch back and forth, but it does definitely take a special mind to be able to do what you guys do every day. So it's good that you found that and you want to continue on with that. So any advice that you could give to someone who may want to get into medical writing? Something that you wish you would have known or someone would have told you as you were coming into the field?
I think networking is really important. Just having a good network of other writers to bounce ideas off of. If you get tired of your job and you're really looking to move around, it's nice to have friends in other places, so that you don't have to kind of start from square one. For me, I found it much easier to find a job that I liked when I knew someone that worked there and they could vouch for me. And then yes, networking is definitely key. And then also just getting acquainted with Microsoft Word. Again, you can think that you know what you're doing, but once you start working in a fast-paced environment and they're asking you to do all these crazy formatting things, you know, you just you're gonna really wish you took the time to learn and get acquainted with that. And you know, always your soft skills. You want to have those on point as well.
Yes, honestly, formatting is a bigger part of medical writing than people give credit to. And it goes into a lot. And it's just, if one person changes up the formatting of one document, it can ruin the whole document, which can put timelines back even more. So it's a huge important piece. You kind of have to know how to put out those little fires everywhere. But something I kind of learned from a medical writer at another company is that, especially when it comes to getting your foot in the door and talking to different medical writers, is that sometimes people can pick up on if you've done your homework. And there are certain terminologies that you can use, especially like if you go to events like this one, or if another organization, company throws something for medical writing, you're just continually listening and you hear what they're talking about. When you start talking, you get into conversation and you use those terms, they're like, okay, that sounds familiar. They get it. Because as medical writers, as Lydia has said, we don't expect you to come in knowing all about Microsoft Word or all about medical writing your first year or even your last year, but just having a little foundation is key and it's going to help you. And especially, I think, not only formatting skills, but also just learning and touching up on medical terminology. Because a lot of times when you start writing, you're like, okay, hypertension, what's this? Pulmonary hypertension, what's this going to be? And it's like you have to remember these keywords of, you know, things that sound familiar or things that you already know about or don't know about, because you have to categorize those things and you have to figure out how to write about them, because you're going to be talking to a whole different audience. So I think it's very key to just keep on doing your research. You don't have to have all the degrees, but I definitely say, or as I've heard from other people, I've kind of seen sometimes it can be a very hard part of the industry to get into. Sometimes people say it's the hardest part of the industry to get into, but it's definitely possible. And it comes back down to networking. And if you can back up that networking with what you know.
Awesome. So so networking, not just within the clinical research field, but definitely within the specific realm of the field that you want to be in, just so that you can be with like minds and kind of be able to pick brains appropriately. I think that's so important. And that's something that I definitely was able to learn within the last couple of months. So get out there, get out there, get out there and network.
Thank you, ladies. let's take questions. Would anyone like to, I always like when you can come off of mute and ask a question. If you are interested in medical writing, this is a great opportunity to ask the ladies about, medical writing. Any questions?
Why
One
is
question.
it, on
Sorry.
on particular websites? Because I am interested in medical writing as well. I do have a little bit of experience as a technology writer. But why is it like when I go on Indeed.com, they're always looking for people who have PhDs? Is that a requirement?
So having a PhD is not a requirement. A lot of times jobs are looking to, I don't want to say cut corners, but that's kind of what it is, because a lot of times hiring managers will assume that if you have a PhD, then they don't have to do a lot of training in terms of really being able to learn a new field really quickly and having a lot of the soft skills that you bring with you out of a PhD program. So a lot of times, and other people can speak to this, but sometimes a job description is really a wish list. And what you'll see is it'll say like PhD or, certain number of years of experience or whatever. So I think Shay, you mentioned you were a clinical trial coordinator before. So sometimes just having, like I did a couple of internships because I didn't have any clinical research experience. All my research was basic research. So, it's not like you can necessarily come in with no background at all, but if you don't have a degree, then maybe you can make up for that by doing an internship or completing an online course. There are a lot of free and low cost resources available, but really with medical writing, they're going to want you to be able to come in and hit the ground running in one way or another, whether it's your background or whether you're really great at writing or project management in some area. They're really going to want you to be well versed somewhere. So a PhD is not necessary, but and I think that's where networking also comes in, right? Because if you're just looking at Indeed or LinkedIn, then you're only getting one aspect of the job market. But if you know someone, a lot of times knowing someone that can vouch for you can go a long way. So
Yeah, and I think like sometimes they won't want PhDs, but they'll ask for something like a master's, and I think that might get you kind of looked at least, rather than just coming in out the gate. But sometimes, and I think this happened in my situation, where it was that unrelated job as a CTC, as a clinical trial coordinator, where my the department noticed how that job has a lot to do with process. And that's also another big thing with medical writing. You have to be really process oriented. So sometimes those are things that will make up for, not having that degree. But I think if you don't have it, it might be important to go ahead and talk to someone in that department to introduce yourself at least, and, get acquainted, let them know the situation that, okay, I don't have this background yet, but I'm super interested. I'm super invested. This is actually something that I've done, and this is actually what I plan to do. So a lot of times, at least have a goal of what you want to do in the writing field. Don't just like jump in it. Like, I want to do such and such in 6 years or XYZ. Just give them something to go off of.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you, ladies.
It looked like Shalina was trying to talk before.
Yeah, I did. I have a question. I guess this is going to be more for Shay. Since you said you were a CTC prior, this is your first medical writing position right now, right? Okay.
Right.
How was the training, the onboarding?
How was the training? The training was fun.
The
training, it's like, you have to see a lot of different documents. So for me personally, of course, you're put with your medical writing buddy, and you're started off small and then you get bigger. So you'll see different things, like you might have amendments you're working on, or you might have documents specifically for pediatric patients, which are called assents, which aren't as massive as informed consents. They still can be pretty massive, but it's like you are kind of waged off. So you keep on growing into bigger documents. And the more you get exposed to these things, the more you get better. And especially when it comes to documenting your completion and working with putting all your metrics in, that's another part of the training that you have to go through, because you have the SOPs tell you how to write the documents, but it's up to you to kind of figure out how to put everything else into place, if that answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much.
We have a question from Ashley in the comments. She's asking, can you also talk about compensation in the field of medical writing? She put in parentheses, expectations, and how to make sure you are being fairly compensated.
So I'm trying to find the link. Hold on one second. So the American Medical Writers Association puts out a survey every several years, and the survey basically asks a whole bunch of medical writers how much, like, what type of medical writing do you do, and how much money do you make? And I'll post a link here. I think there's a free version. Of course, there's a portion of it that's behind a paywall, but I think there's a free version that has some information, and it gives you information. Another thing you can do, I mean, nowadays, when I have spoken to recruiters, and they will be very transparent about how much the compensation is, so you can compare and contrast that way, straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And just look online for average salaries at different companies. I actually think that the information on Glassdoor does a really good job of being pretty accurate in terms of how much compensation is. But I don't know if you missed the conversation in the beginning, where if you're starting out, you can probably expect 50, 60,000, something like that. And then as you move up in your career, definitely on up, six figures, I think pretty easily if you work for maybe, I would say 2 or 3 years, moving into higher levels, you can probably hit 6 figures, just to give a ballpark range. And to make sure you're being well compensated, you can ask for promotion and raise. That's what I did. You can switch jobs. I mean, that's the best way to increase your income, is to really switch jobs. So there are a lot of different strategies you can use.
Nice. I see 2 other questions in the chat. One says, how do you demonstrate your love for writing? And especially if you do not have a hard science background.
So I think blogging is one way. If you guys look at Jenny Pickett's website, she's just kind of blogs about science topics that she's interested in. I don't know how often she posts. On LinkedIn, I don't know. I have never posted an article on LinkedIn, but if you want to use LinkedIn as a platform, you could write about, like, your transition into or your desire to transition into medical writing. I mean, any number of topics you could write about, your current role, whatever it is, as long as you're writing consistently and showing that you know how to write for different audiences. I think there are a lot of low, I don't want to say low effort, but low barrier entry type of writing opportunities that you can take for yourself. So those would be my ideas, and in addition to anything you do for school or your current job. So
Nice. I also just thought of something. So ACRP, if you're not familiar with them, you should be. They also have, like, if you join a chapter and become or have a position on the board, they have certain things called Spotlight on Research, where they interview their upcoming presenters. I actually did one for them. You could check my LinkedIn page for it, but that is also a perfect opportunity for you to get some writing under your belt. So definitely check that out.
So Andrea, were you about to ask a question?
Yes, thank you. Hi, this is Andrea Hall, Houston. Thank you. I was going to ask, I have experience with writing. I'm currently working on my dissertation in epidemiology and work with abstracts and have a science background. And I guess my question is, because I haven't been in clinical research in a few years, how would someone like myself enter back into it? Like I said, I enjoy writing, and I enjoy writing and doing research because that's what I'm doing currently. But I don't know how I would be able to express that or in this particular climate right now, how would I be able to share that with letting people know that I'm interested in it, or how would I be able to get into that, even though I have the knowledge, but I haven't been in it. I've been in laboratory management for a few years, so I don't have the clinical research, and I'm getting into it with this wonderful group, which I'm just really eager and enthusiastic and very poised and waiting for my opportunity. But I would like to know, what are your thoughts about that?
I mean, frankly, I think you would look amazing just by trying and applying to come in, because you have the background right there. And, not everybody who comes in has that. I mean, just like with any part of clinical research, you're going to find people who are pharmacists, you're going to find people who are educators. And to be someone who's already working on their dissertation, especially in a subject as big as epidemiology, I think you'd have a good chance. Even if you didn't get it on your first try, your name would at least be in the pool. So they'd at least know who you are, and you'd at least have your foot in the door at least.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
And Sydney has a question in the chat. It says, how beneficial is a pure science background, including publications with a PhD? I'm really interested in medical writing positions.
I mean, companies are going to want the most they can get out of you, right? So they're going to say they prefer someone with a PhD, etc. But again, it's really not necessary. If you have any clinical research experience, or really any research experience at all, and can demonstrate a desire to write, and want to learn, then a lot of these entry level and internship positions that do pay a salary or hourly wage and benefits oftentimes, are a really good way to get your foot in the door. Again, if you can take 6 months out of your life to really be trained and to get your foot in the door in the field with one of these entry level or internship positions, then I think you're well positioned to grow in the field if that's what you want to do. So don't let not having a degree or a higher science degree, hold you back.
Honestly, when I first started in medical writing, I only had my bachelor's, and I still only have my bachelor's until May. But that's still right, Courtney? Okay, but that's honestly it. Just by having an interest and putting yourself out there, that it's going to help, because they have a lot of preferences, but there's also like, okay, you don't have the degree, but can you back it up? Like, can you talk about a therapeutic area in detail? Like, what do you have to make up for not having the degree? Because honestly, like we said before, it's not about what you know, it's about who you know and how you do it.
So something that I did when I was first starting out is I found a research article, I think it was on a cancer drug, and I wrote a summary. I wrote 2 summaries of the same article. One summary was geared towards a lay person's audience, so just the general public. And then one summary was geared towards like healthcare professionals, so like doctors. And I used those as writing clips to say, this is an example of my writing experience. I also summarized my dissertation research in like a very kind of quirky way, as just to show like the range of types of writing I could do. And these weren't published anywhere. This was just my personal collection of things that I wrote to demonstrate, hey, I can write about science and here's a demonstration of that. So it could just be as simple as having your own personal collection of writing that you've done that you can show employers if they ask about it. You might also have to do a writing test. Some companies will have you do like a brief writing test. So, you might want to make sure that you're up on your grammar and sentence structure, but you can be creative. There's just all kinds of ways to really demonstrate. There's no one answer, and it's not always straightforward. So.
Well, thank you, ladies, so much. I know we are over time by a little bit. Thank you so much for sharing with us about medical writing. I feel like every time I come from this, I'm just so inspired by your stories and your journeys. And, thank you, ladies, for sharing. Some of the keynotes that my takeaways from our meeting is to network, and networking is key. And just if you don't have a background in medical writing, you have the opportunity to create your own path. Like Lydia was saying, making your own blogs and, creating a portfolio of your writing and just being able to use that and share. You don't always have to have that experience, but even taking a low paying position, just to get your foot in the door to help you and propel you in your career when it comes to medical writing is also an option. You ladies also mentioned, wearing a lot of hats and being able to pivot. And, I just feel like it's really important to be able to multitask and to be organized when you are a medical writer. So if these are some of the skills that you possess, I definitely would say to reach out to Lydia and Shay. And I'm pretty sure, just because I know, just with the conversation with them, I know that they would absolutely be willing to help you if you are interested in medical writing. This is an opportunity, especially with creating Black women in clinical research. We want to help you. That's why we are providing these resources. There is no gatekeeper when it comes to clinical research. There is enough room and opportunity for everyone. So if you have a question, please always feel free to reach out to the speakers, reach out to the co-hosts like Andrika, Courtney. Like, we are here to help. This is a sharing of information to help you in your clinical research career. We don't want anyone to feel like they're alone. And, that's what I experienced when I was involved in clinical research. Hence, that's why we have created Black Women in Clinical Research, to give you all of the tools and resources that you need in order to be successful. So I just want to thank each and every one of you guys who have joined us tonight. Thank you for sharing an hour with us. Please feel free to drop your LinkedIn URL in the chat, because I know a lot of times your name on here is not the same name as your LinkedIn name. You might be going by Sugar Kisses. I'm just being funny, you guys. But yes, please put your LinkedIn URL in here. It is so great to speak with you guys. Please always feel free to reach out to us. And I will leave the chat up for a little bit so that if people want to drop their LinkedIn URL and connect with other people, they can. But thank you again. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, Shay. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Andrika. You ladies have a great night.
Thanks for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Nice talking to y'all.
Oh, and okay, before we go, if anyone has any last thoughts, I'm like Maury, do you guys have any final thoughts? Anyone want to share any final thoughts for, everyone before they head out?
I have some final thoughts.
Okay, go ahead.
About this networking piece. That has been one of the major things that I have been hearing since I've joined the group and since I've connected with some ladies in the group, is that networking is hard for you. It's not going to be easy if you don't try. So I think sitting here and thinking about it, I think a great suggestion for the group would be, if you are having a hard time networking and you're going to go to these events, or you want to go to these events, link up with somebody who knows how to network. Link up with someone who knows how to talk, who knows and who would not mind not just vouching for themselves, but for vouching for you as well. So that way you can kind of understand how it works, and kind of find your own way in the networking world. Because that's the only way that you're gonna learn how to do it, is if you actually put yourself out there and try.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
I think to go off of Courtney's point, you know, like not even just talking to them, but if it's like a situation like today, or you meet someone, let them know you ever need anything, please feel free to reach out to me. You know, always keep business cards on you. I know people think they're getting outdated, but they're classic and people remember those things. So always have a way for people to contact you.
I dropped some information in the chat just because I'm very introverted. So for anyone else who is, that would be just my little inspirational advice to push yourself past your comfort zone. But my final words would be that medical writing has been a huge blessing for me. When I was in school, getting my degree and doing my dissertation work, it was a struggle. It was very, very challenging and a very hard time for me. In medical writing helped me learn that I do have a lot of skills and I have a lot to offer, and I've been able to have success in a way that makes me feel empowered. And you can make a really great living. I mean, it's really helped me accomplish a lot of my financial goals as well. So I think it can be a really good job if you just put in a little bit of work up front to get your foot in the door and then grow from there. So those are my final thoughts.
I'm about to say, I completely agree. I feel awkward all the time, but I just be like, I push through it. I be like, I laugh at my own jokes. So even if nobody else laughs at my jokes, I laugh at mine. So I know people probably think I'm crazy when I do that, but I mean, just you have to put yourself out there. The worst anything anyone can say is no, but at least you know that you tried. So that's the most important thing. Andrika, you have any final thoughts before we leave? Okay, she said she's good, son. All right, y'all. Have a great night. Please hit us up. Thank you so much.